Finally, in November, the tensions at the Belarusian-Polish border reached a boiling point. Thousands of foreign citizens taken hostage by the regime have come to the focus of the EU. Phone calls have been exchanged to elevate their conditions. But at the same time, 9 million Belarusians remain hostages of the regime. Have we forgotten the tragic lessons of our European past? The tyrants are emboldened by appeasement, not placated. That when you avoid confrontation with a bully, you only make the inevitable showdown that might more costly and dangerous. But do you really suppose it will stop there? We are already seeing how dangerous a regime like this can be to its neighbors. Lithuania and Poland are facing the biggest test of their border security. By the way, Polska, Lietuva, stay strong. We know that you pay a big price for being true and principled friends to the people of Belarus. Supposing this abuse of migrants is somehow stopped, do you really believe the regime's threats beyond its borders will end there? Increases in the flow of smuggled drugs and other contraband, a military provocation, a disaster at a nuclear power plant right on the EU's external borders, none of this is just my imagination. These are threats that the regime itself has made. Whatever it takes to get what it wants. Meanwhile, Europe hesitates, time goes by for those unjustly imprisoned, killed, or exiled. Time is measured differently for Belarusians. It's measured in lost moments of happiness, moments that are the right of every one of us to experience, moments that are the reason why all of us want to live in freedom and dignity. Ladies and gentlemen, do you think these people understand what we mean when we talk about the EU's long bureaucratic processes and complex diplomacy? Do you think our statements of deep concern give them hope and confidence? What can the European Union really say to the people of Belarus, to the forgotten Europeans who want the same things the rest of Europe enjoys? Perhaps we don't have a right to demand your help or support. Perhaps you may refuse us because it may contradict your national interests, or perhaps it's bad for your businesses. But I am here to ask for your support nevertheless. Our fight for freedom is your fight for freedom too. Only by standing together and acting decisively does democracy have the chance to survive in this world. Distinguished representatives of Europe, pardon my straightforwardness, but I must say it. It's getting late. Since August 2020, there have been ample gestures and expressions of solidarity. Belarusians were praised for reigniting their faith in democracy and human dignity. Is it not the turn of Europeans to demonstrate their commitment to those values with actions? Will Europe as a whole have the courage to take decisive action now? Or will we wait another year? Dear ladies and gentlemen, we don't have another year. Neither does Belarus, neither does Europe. There is more we can do than just wait and react. The regime in Minsk is motivated by fear of the Belarusian people, hence the escalation of violence. Meanwhile, the Belarusians are not giving up. 3 independent surveys show more than half of Belarusians want a new presidential election. Despite intense political pressure, Belarusians are still finding ways to protest. Maybe not in the ways that get the attention of your media. We need Europe to be more proactive when facing autocracy. The cliché about Belarus being the last dictatorship of Europe is in a way misleading. Dictatorship doesn't have natural geographical limits. It spreads if it's not stopped. Dictatorships, after all, can be compared to a virus infecting the body. We all know that the more disease is ignored, the more difficult it is to treat it in the future. And it's now clear to the whole world that waiting and seeing is not the right strategy to address the virus. Action is crucial. To successfully overcome a virus, a 3-part strategy can help. First, isolation, to prevent its spread. Second, treatment, to remove its negative effects. And last but not least, the immunity, which allows keeping the body in good shape. The same strategies can be applied by Europe when dealing with the virus of dictatorship in Belarus. The first part of our strategy should be the isolation and non-recognition of the regime. Many Belarusians are hurt to see that even today, such influential European media, from Deutsche Welle to BBC, call Alexander Lukashenko president. He is not. Calling him president shapes the wrong perception among millions of viewers. He is a citizen of Belarus who has illegally usurped presidential power by violence. Europe, let's stand up to your decisions. You didn't recognize the elections, so do not hold this impostor for what he isn't. Do not recognize any deals made without Belarusians' agreement. Speak clear and loud. The contracts signed by the regime after 9 August 2020 are and will be legally void. Lukashenko is gambling with Belarus sovereignty. We must stay firm in non-recognition policy and be clear that independence and sovereignty cannot be traded or undermined. This non-recognition should be coherent. New ambassadors to Belarus shouldn't be appointed. Nor should anyone who respects freedom, human rights, and the rule of law receive the regime's ambassadors. We also shouldn't invite its representatives to international gatherings, sport or cultural events. Suspend the regime's participation in Interpol. This would send a signal that abuses will no longer be tolerated. Instead, I encourage you to give a voice to the Belarusian people. Invite Belarusian democratic forces to all international fora to represent them at the highest level, particularly during the Eastern Partnership Summit. The second part of our strategy is treatment. We should push back on the regime and limit its access to the resources it uses to maintain power. When your child is ill, you know you have to give him medicine, even if it hurts to see him resisting. But you realize that this is the only way. The same principle should apply when we talk about European sanctions against the regime. Let me assure you, sanctions do work. Continue holding a consistent sanction policy. Sanctions split the elites, destroy corruption schemes, and divide people around Lukashenko, as no one wants to share the responsibilities for the regime's crimes. Let us be firm. We must not let lobbyists block the necessary sanctions. Let's close all remaining loopholes. Let's coordinate our actions with the US and the UK to make the sanctions effective and not merely symbolic. By all means, let us be consistent. It makes little sense to further invest in the mafia regime. Send a message that we will not enrich it so that it can use these resources to abuse the citizens. And of course, let us be true to international law. Give the green light to prosecute the human rights offenders under the universal criminal jurisdiction. Invoke the regime's responsibility for capturing the civilian aircraft and its hybrid attack on the EU borders. Let's make sure all the evidence of the regime's crimes will lay on the table of the International Tribunal, at ICC and ICJ. I call on Europe to take initiative in that. Many Belarusians fled in a hurry with short-term Schengen visas. Many Belarusians don't like to be considered as immigrants, but as temporary relocants. They want to get back home soon, but they need small things like legal stay and work permits. Though we usually speak of democracy in high terms, democracy is made of small details too. Help Belarusians so they can help Belarus and Europe too. So we could continue the fight for our freedom and yours. Every country has its own path to democracy, and this is ours. Now, 1 year later, Belarusians are much closer to their goal, but the road has become more difficult. Obstacles are constantly being thrown in our path. Today, not only democracy in Belarus, but also democracy in Europe depends on whether we will walk this path together and overcome these obstacles together. It's time to show that European values are and will continue to be our greatest source of strength and the only solid foundation for peace and prosperity. I'm here today to invite you to walk this path with us. Thank you very much. And Живе Беларусь, Живе Europa, long live Belarus, and long live Europe.